This is part 2 of chapter 20, Declaring Independence from History of Us. We're starting at the top of page 100, where it says, all men are created equal. Just what does equal mean? Are we all the same? Look around you. Of course we aren't. Some of us are smarter than others, some of us are better athletes, and some of us are better looking, and some are nicer. But none of that matters, said Jefferson. We are all equal in the eyes of God, and we are entitled to equal rights. The right to live, the right to be free, the right to be able to try to find the kind of life that will make us happy. And that is the whole reason for having governments, he said. Governments are not made to make kings happy. They are for the benefit of the people who are being governed. Governments should have the consent of the governed. Sometimes, when ideas are written down, they take on meanings that go beyond what the writers intended. Jefferson's Declaration of Independence was great from the moment he wrote it, but it has grown even greater with the passing of time. He said, all men are created equal. He didn't mention women. Did he mean to include women? No one knows. Perhaps not. We do know that in the 18th century, the words men and mankind included men and women, but very few people, except for Tom Paine, thought much about women's rights. It was the 20th century before women in America had the right to vote. Did Thomas Jefferson mean to include black men when he said all men? Historians sometimes argue about that. You'll have to decide for yourself. In 1776, when Jefferson wrote the Declaration, he included a long section in which he described slavery as, quote, a cruel war against human nature. Yet Jefferson lived in a slave society and owned slaves himself. He thought slavery was wrong, and he said so. Quote, nothing is more certainly written in the book of fate than that these people are to be free, wrote Jefferson. Many congressmen agreed. John Adams spoke out strongly against slavery. Benjamin Franklin and Benjamin Rush founded the first anti-slavery society in the New World. But South Carolina and Georgia would not sign the Declaration if it contained the anti-slavery section. So Jefferson's anti-slavery words were taken out. The delegates compromised. Should they have gone ahead without those southern colonies? That would have meant that the Deep South would not have joined in the fight against England, and it might have meant defeat for the proposed Union of States. Jefferson and Adams and Franklin and others thought the Union was more important than the issue of slavery. They knew that staying with England would not bring freedom to the slaves. They thought slavery could be dealt with later. Do you agree with them? Those were tough decisions the delegates were making. It took a civil war to end slavery. Do you think that war could have been avoided? Do you think the delegates should have acted differently in 1776? Of one thing you can be sure. Today, when people all over the world read Jefferson's words, they understand them to mean all people, men, women, and children of all colors and beliefs. This little section is kind of interesting. I don't know if I'll have time to read it, but I'm going to start. All men are created equal. The words in the Declaration of Independence are so clear, all men are created equal, that they leave no way to explain slavery. No one anticipated that. The Declaration was meant to tell why we were breaking away from England, but it did much more than that. Jefferson's words had a power that no one at the time foresaw. For Benjamin Banneker, they spoke in a special way. Banneker was an African American, but he was not a slave. He grew up on a small tobacco farm in Maryland and learned to read and write at a nearby Quaker school. After that, he borrowed books from a neighbor. I'm going to stop right there because I'm running out of time, and we're good to go. Finish this. It's really interesting. Okay.